Welcome. In this video, we're going to discuss key pointers for social media marketing for Chapter 18. So, as I mentioned several times from the previous chapters, you should not skip the learning objectives at the beginning of each chapter. As long as you understand them as a key pointers, you're not going to have any problem when it comes to understanding those key ideas of specific chapter. Okay, so if you move on, I'd like to just point out some of the things that you might remember from chapter 2. This was the diagram when it comes to talking about some of the key element for marketing strategy. So I like to point out that social media marketing is specifically related to which area you might think of as the in the marketing mix here. So which area the social media marketing can be related specifically out of four marketing mix. That can be specifically, especially for promotion side of it, right? That's for sure. So there's a lot of publicity going on, there's a lot of promotion going on by using social media marketing tools. Okay. So please keep in mind that when it comes to working together for your marketing strategy, you should not, well, I'm sure you guys all know, understand better because you guys are tech savvy generation, right? So you should not skip the social media marketing specifically in the promotion part, okay? So I'd like to talk about some based on the learning objective 1 about integrated marketing communication. So if you go to the page 331, there's a social media marketing. So I don't want to just repeat it, what it says in the textbook. It simply says on top of the page is any tool for service that uses the internet to facilitate a conversation. Conversation for what? Which side? The conversation between the sellers and the customers, right? That's for sure. So based on definition, I like to talk about also what are the four implications social media has on marketers. So the first thing they talk about on page 31 at the top of it, they're talking about marketers must realize they often do not control the content of social media sites. So you might heard about a lot of kind of news flash talking about kind of social media marketing disasters. So sometimes those sellers have poorly responded for customers' comments, and that creates a lot more kind of negative buzzes among the customers, and that has a direct negative impact for their sales as well. The second thing they're talking about is the ability to share the experiences quickly and with such a large number of people amplifies the impact of the word of mouth in ways that can impact the company's bottom line. So word of mouth, especially in the hospitality business, retail business, you name it. Nowadays, as you guys learned before from the previous chapter, 87% of the industry business is based on service industry, right? Even for manufacturing business, logistics business, you name it, you cannot run the business without customer service or service marketing, right? So in that regard, so that's say that word of mouth. Okay, the customers stop by some of the kind of retail shop. They had a positive kind of experiences based on the interactions with the sellers and staff members at the stores, and they go back to any kind of social gathering, and they talk about the kind of positive things about the store, right? So those things always have a greatest impact when it comes to running the business, right? So that's what they're talking about. The third thing they're talking about is social media allows marketers to listen Domino Pizzas listen to what is being posted about its product. So, and decide to use the information to change its product. So you might have seen a lot of kind of news flash, kind of commercials from Domino Pizzas. They actually try to do whatever the customers kind of comments. If it's showing that they're kind of that much serious, but when it comes to running the business, we try to meet your expectation, or we try to go above and beyond your expectation. So you please make a comment on anything about when it comes to running our business, and you might have seen the kind of news flash, any kind of commercial talking about they even kind of fixed a pothole on the road, okay, to have not to have any kind of a delivery accident. So for example, like when the delivery car is going through the pothole on the road, possibly they have a flat tire and they're not going to deliver their pizza on time. So any kind of roadside kind of problem, they try to fix it with the city or kind of local governments by investing their own money, right? Although it's kind of city business, right? On page 330, so the next one they're talking about is, if you go to page 332, they're talking about social media provide more sophisticated method of measuring how marketers meet the interaction with the customers than the traditional advertising tools. That's for sure. So obviously, rather than in the conventional ways of kind of our marketing tools, for example, like when they actually go out for kind of hitting the commercial for the nationwide television in the past, it was simply kind of one-way communication, right, in the past. But nowadays, they actually try to have a kind of instant, on-demand, kind of on-the-spot kind of communication between the sellers and customers, right? That's the kind of a upside, also the downside of the social media marketing. That's why the marketers oftentimes they cannot control the content of it because of their spontaneous kind of response and the interactions between the sellers and customers, right? And the next one I'd like to talk about is, as an example, is what does Jappos do for employee online training and performance? It can be a good example because although I know we already discussed there's a limitation when it comes to controlling the content of kind of social media content, they try to provide the customers when it comes to interacting with the customers. In a way, they try to manage those things as much as they can. So what the Japanese do is, if you look at the bottom of page 333 on the left side of it, they're talking about all the employees. They have a kind of online training, Twitter training, and they try to post the kind of social media about their experience at work. So it's not just about a thing that, okay, the customer just kind of buy the product and service for a certain company, and they actually try to interact for that regard about the specific product and service anymore. As you might have seen in the previous chapter, we already pointed out that so many times and multiple times that if the company does the kind of good job when it comes to taking care of their employees, when it comes to they try to act on as a kind of a corporate social responsibility, it surely can give a positive impact for the purchase decision of the customers, right? So in that regard, Jappers for encourage the employees to post their experience at work, online, and Twitter and social media. In that way, you surely can have a positive impact for customers when it comes to making purchase decisions for the product and service from Jappers, right? The last one on this page I like to talk about are the key usage numbers for social media. So if you look at the bottom of it, on the right side of it, the numbers are amazing. So if you look at that, there are 3.77 billion internet users, 2.8 billion whom are active on social media. So if you look at all those numbers, trust me, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, these numbers is just a 1/10 of it. Okay, it was not that much kind of popular. The social media marketing was not that much popular at all, but it kind of has been amplified. It has been kind of booming up, quadrupled and tripled. Okay, when it comes to using those social media tools, not just kind of part of the marketing for in the daily lives as well, right? So that's the thing you might want to keep in mind when it comes to working on your marketing strategy as well. So next thing I'd like to talk about, based on the learning object 2, how to create a social media campaign. So as an example, so I'd like to talk about what is a social commerce as an example. So if you look at the page 334, there is a big picture from Groupon. That's a kind of good example, right? A lot of people use it. They can have a kind of a discount together as a group, right? And the next thing I'd like to talk about, how did favorite family recipe create a promotion in what social media commerce site? So you can find at the bottom of the page 334, they talk about Pinterest, and they actually just had a positive impact by sharing their family recipe. So it's not just about, once again, it's not just about kind of tools you can say specifically just about their kind of a product and service they selling selling to their customers, right? They also shares a lot of stories what's going on inside their companies. Sometimes it can be a family recipe, sometimes the employees' experiences at work in that specific company, right? Those kind of things. The next thing I'd like to talk about is what is social media monitoring? And what has Eventis done as a social media campaign? So if you look at that, so especially I already gave this kind of gave this social media monitoring. What's the concept of it as questions? I don't want to repeat for that. So I put an example. So if you look at the page 337, there's a good picture about Wendy's and what are they doing, and when it comes to talking about social media campaign and social monitoring as a function. So they what they're doing is they try to help those kind of children in the foster care. So once again, we talk about some of the kind of corporate responsibility, and based on that, a lot of companies they try to do their best, not just kind of selling the product and service to their customers. They try to work as a societal member and contributing for any kind of goods, greatest good, or philanthropic kind of a purpose for the society, right? And the next thing I want to talk about is what are the 5 ways to measure the effectiveness of a social media effort. So if you go to page 338, you can, on the left side on top of it, you can find identify KPIs, align your social media goals with your business objectives, set up Google Analytics, assign values to KPI, and benchmark against your competitors. So you might have heard about Google Analytics. If you never heard about it, please go to Google Analytics website. You can simply find it by Googling it, right? And it can provide a lot of kind of valuable information by having a contract between the Google and the company, and they sometimes are tracking down what's the kind of number of visits for specific web page they want to uh, boom up when it comes to having online business or something, retail business, you name it. Also, you might be wondering what's the meaning of a KPI. So it's a key performance indicator. So for example, like if you want to expand your market share, obviously your market share should be a key performance indicator. It's not just about market share. You might want to talk about sales numbers. You might talk about revenue. You might want to talk about net profit. Those kind of things can be a critical measurement that whether your marketing strategy implementation has had the positive impact for the market and for the customers, okay, target customers, right? So to measure those effectiveness, if you look at the right side of it, in the nice box, there is a kind of measurement a matrix out there. So you can see the buzz, interest, participation, engagement, search engine rank and results, influence, sentiment analysis, website metrics. So if you look at that, there's no confusing concept. It's very straightforward. You might heard about this kind of concept a lot. If you read them through, there's nothing complicated, right? The next thing I'll talk about is what are the 6 categories of social media users. So if you look at the bottom of it, page 338, there are creators, critics, collectors, joiners, spectators, inactives. So for example, you are more like a creators as a customer. But simply, if the customers ask you to make a kind of make a make a critics to work as a critics, you're not going to like it, right? So by categorizing some of the target customers, whether they're actually just creators and critics and joiners or spectators, you might want to provide a proper connections and interaction by using social media users. For example, if you're one of the inactives, and they try to reach out to you a lot of times, and throughout the day, throughout the months, are you gonna like it? No, you're not gonna like it at all. So before doing that, before using any kind of marketing tool, social media marketing tool to reach out to specific customers, you need to know what are their, right? Whether they actually joined a specific group out of 6, right? If you're more like inactives, you don't have to try to contact them all the time, right? So next thing I like to talk about is some of the examples for in social media tools. If you look at that, I just put on names on it: blogs, microblogs, social networks, media sharing, social use site, review site, virtual reality is VR, online gaming. You might have heard about it. You guys know a lot better about this than me. Um, so I don't want to talk about it. Just read them through. There's nothing complicated. It's very straightforward, the kind of explanation and definition of it. Okay. And then the last thing I want to talk about is the kind of 6 stages in creating an effective social media plan. So if you go to page 346, there's kind of steps on it. So listen to customers, the social media objectives, define strategies, identify the target audience, select the tools and perform platforms, implement and monitor the strategy. So if you read them through, once again, there's nothing like confusion. There's nothing like being complicated to understand this. They're very straightforward. But the problem is, uh, based on my experience that I've been teaching the marketing class from the previous semesters, a lot of students, they actually took it for granted. Well, yeah, I know that. It's very straightforward. It's easy to understand. The problem is you gotta apply that in your marketing strategy. Understanding is the one thing, but put them into practice is the other. Okay, so when it comes to putting those into practice, you got to play your creativity. You got to play your insight based on understanding those concepts, based on understanding those informations out there we have been discussing all along, right? So that's the key point of it. Okay, so that's that for chapter 18. Okay, so if you have any questions, please contact me by email or Skype Business. Okay.